Hello, and welcome to In Our Midst, where we feature people and organizations making positive change in our community and in the world. My name is Phil Rosner, and I'm your host. In this episode, I will be talking with Adrienne Carter, who is the co-founder and director of services with VICCIR, the Vancouver Island Counselling Centre for Immigrants and Refugees. Her life story is truly amazing in that it really shows how the extreme life challenges that she came up against during her early years became the impetus for her to embark on a path where she would work and continues to work tirelessly for the benefit of others. Made possible, I believe, through her positive attitude and unyielding dedication to compassionate action, not to mention her sunny disposition. Adrienne was born to a Jewish family in Budapest, Hungary, during the time of the Nazis' final solution, followed by the infamous death marches. Most of her extended family, her aunts, uncles, and their spouses, never returned from the internment camps. In March 1945, 1 month after the liberation of Budapest by the Russian army, Adrienne and her parents celebrated her first birthday. Through a combination of sheer luck combined with great fortitude, they had managed to survive. This was just the start of her incredible journey. Please join me now as we delve deeper into the life and times of Adrienne Carter. Hello, Adrienne. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Phil, for inviting me.
So, I understand that you were a child of the Holocaust. Please, could you talk a little bit about that and the impact that that had on your family?
Well, I was born in 1944 during the Second World War. And Hungary was probably the last country that was invaded by the Nazi army. So 8 days after my birth, the German army marched in, and the persecution of the Jews have begun in earnest. I don't have any memory of those years, but during the first year of my life, it has been terrible persecution, and we spent it in hiding. My great-grandparents spent the time in the Jewish ghetto, and half of my family, whom I have never met, were taken to Auschwitz and they were killed there. So this had quite an impact on the remaining family, and interestingly, nobody has ever spoken about it. As a child, all I heard is that they have never come back, but I did not know where they have not come back from. And during those times, Hungary really experienced horrible persecutions where people were taken into death marches, and that's the way they were often taken to Auschwitz. My father was in a labor camp, and my mother was taken on one of these death marches when I was just a few months old, leaving me with my grandmother, who was dying of cancer at that time. So, and the rest of the time during this year, we were hidden in Wallenberg's Swedish safe houses, and so we have survived.
Right.
And then the Russians came in.
Yes, I was going to get to that next. So, after dealing with the war and the Nazis, your family still had to contend with the incursion of the Soviets in Hungary. And as a girl, what effect did that have on you personally?
Well, this particular time I remember very well. It was from the time I was 1 year old to 12 years old. And we grew up in a communist state. We have learned how to behave. You couldn't talk very freely. You couldn't read many different books. I was a great pioneer. I have believed a lot of the things that we have learned in school. We have worshipped Lenin, Stalin, and the Hungarian leader Rákosi.
Right.
And so, but my parents had a much more difficult time because they couldn't tell me the truth of what was happening, because if I would have said anything in school, they would have been imprisoned.
Oh my God, yeah.
So this is the way it was until in October 23rd, 1956, the Hungarian Revolution broke out.
And was that when your family decided to leave Hungary and to...
Yes.
That's when you became a refugee in a new country?
Yes, well, first we had to escape from
Yes.
Hungary.
Of course,
which was definitely not easy.
Right.
And we escaped after a long night's walk into Austria, where we were in refugee camps, in many different refugee camps for probably about 4 months. And Canada has accepted us, but we did not know at that time when or which country will take us in.
And I also understand that you, as a young teenager, you came up against a great deal of anti-Semitism, and this obviously took some type of toll on you. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Interestingly, during the time Hungary was under Russian rule, there was I did not experience any anti-Semitism or racism. We had students from all over the world, many African students studying in Hungary, and I did not even know about my Jewish background. But once we became refugees, the anti-Semitism came from the other Hungarians, the non-Jewish Hungarians. And it was really bitter, and I did not understand it. What is this being Jewish, and why do you hate us? And so, like the buses that took the Jewish refugees from one camp to another was overturned, and the scariest thing was when we were coming to Canada on the boat, they have threatened to throw all the Jews into the ocean. And to my 12-year-old self, that was really frightening. So I kind of blocked that out, but I made a promise, if we make it to Canada safely, nobody will know my Jewish origins.
I see.
And I kept that for a couple of decades.
So you and your family made it to Canada. Where did you settle first?
Well, we landed in Halifax. They put us in a old prison there. We waited for several weeks, and then we were put on the train that went from Halifax all through the country, and everywhere a certain number of refugees were dropped off. So we were dropped off in Calgary, where we stayed for a couple of months, and then we made it to Vancouver, and then eventually we made it to Toronto.
Okay. So you had most of your education growing up in Toronto, is that correct?
Yes, well, the education was difficult. I did not speak any language. None of us spoke English. And I was an excellent student back in Hungary. I was supposed to go into grade 8, but because I didn't speak the language, they put me back into grade 5. So I worked really hard in catching up, but everything had to be translated into Hungarian, solving the problem, then retranslated into English. So it wasn't easy. But that's where I finished public school, and I finished all my high school in Toronto.
Okay. And then you entered university.
Yes.
And
fantastic time. Things
Yeah, things really
opened
changed
up.
for you.
Yes.
And upon entering university, you were destined to meet the man who would be your husband, Barry Carter. How did that happen?
Well, I was always searching. I was searching for spirituality, trying to see what I believed in. And at age 19, I became a Baha'i. And so at a Baha'i meeting, I met this young black man, it was called Negro at that time, who was also searching and looking to understand the meaning of life. And we met, we had a friendship, and our friendship deepened. And this was an interracial friendship, so it wasn't the easiest thing back in 1965.
Right, I bet. Yeah. Okay, and but your relationship flourished and you ended up getting married.
The relationship had flourished. Us Baha'is, we needed to get consent of all living parents.
Right.
It took us 6 months of work to let our parents know that we were strong enough for such a relationship and we could carry it on. We interviewed many interracial couples to see how they fared, and the Baha'i community supported our relationship, and that was a big deal to us. So by the time it came for our marriage, we all had written permission from all our parents and had an amazing wedding. And we've been married now for 55 wonderful years.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, jumping across to now the work that you got involved with, can you please tell us how you got involved in your early work with traumatized refugees in refugee camps?
Well, there was quite an interval in between marriage and me working in the refugee camp. We managed to have 5 wonderful children.
Okay, nice.
We managed to go to Nigeria and live there for 2 years, where I was teaching social work. And then I worked for 20-some years at Child and Youth Mental Health. And then in 1999, I joined Médecins Sans Frontières while still working for Child and Youth Mental Health.
Right.
And with them, I was sent to many, many different countries because of war or natural disasters on those countries. So many of the places where I had the opportunity to work and train people were in refugee camps. And my job was to get the local people who were interested in volunteering for MSF, train them in how to provide mental health support, and then provide supervision to them while they were working with all the local people who have experienced a lot of trauma. And I worked in 15 different missions with MSF, and then in 2011 I transferred to Center for Victims of Torture, the American Center, and I was first sent to Kenya, where during the election many of the Kenyans have experienced torture. And so we worked with them, and then I was sent to Jordan, where most of the Syrian and Iraqi refugees were sent. Many of them in refugee camps, but we worked with Center for Victims of Torture with the urban refugees.
I see.
So I got lots of experience with refugees from all different countries.
Areas of the world as well.
Yes.
So finally you returned home to Vancouver Island with the intention of retiring in 2015.
Yes.
But you decided to put your retirement on hold. Can you tell us why?
Well, I have learned a great deal working in Jordan. I have learned much about the Syrian refugees, the Iraqi refugees, their hopes and dreams and the traumas they have suffered. And I knew that many of them were coming to Canada. Many were going to other places in the world. But I also knew that there were no services here in Victoria or Vancouver Island for people who were newcomers and who did not speak the language.
Right.
They did not take very easily to mental health services. But if they did, they wanted to express themselves in their own language. And unless we had a unique service for them, they wouldn't come. And I also knew before I left that there were well over 3,000 people already in Victoria who experienced torture, but they never got any kind of assistance.
I see.
So that was the reason why we wanted to set up a very small group, couple of us working with a few refugees.
So, and this basically turned into what was originally known as CCIR, right? The Counseling Centre for Immigrants and Refugees.
And this turned into the Vancouver Island Counselling Centre for Immigrants and Refugees, yes.
So, when you first started the group, what were the most difficult challenges that you came up against?
Money.
It's always
Absolutely
money.
money. We had no money.
Right.
Linda McLagan and I started this organization, and we each put in 500 of our dollars into the bank, and that was it. But what was so exciting to see, even though we had no money, people wanted to come and work with us.
Right.
We had a lot of volunteers and practicum students. They asked for placement. People were eager to work with newcomers.
Right.
And so the first few months we have given a lot of trainings about working with people from different cultures. And what I learned working overseas was very helpful in training the counselors here. And then the group has grown, and for 4 years all of our counselors who were at least master's level counselors worked free of charge.
Right.
And it's only the last several months, since November of 2019, that we started getting funding.
Right. Right.
And what else was unique is that we also recruited a group of interpreters and trained and provided support to them. So each client can receive services in their own language, and when a family comes, each member of the family who needs the help was able to receive it. So the whole family, children, adults, grandparents, they were able to heal together. And that was very unique in Victoria.
Right. And I know that even with the COVID-19 issue here, VICCR is still
Online.
able to
Yes.
offer its services online, which is it was really beautiful.
We haven't
That's really
missed
awesome.
a beat. When we had to close our offices in mid-March,
Right.
we went online immediately.
Yes.
And everything continues. The client services, the trainings, the supervision, it all continues online.
Right. Now I have a specific question for you. So, you know, I have heard that VICCIR has really become established as a model in mental health counseling for the refugee and immigrant community. Has this in any way kind of changed your vision for the future development of the organization?
No, it hasn't changed my view at all. This is exactly what I was hoping that our organization would be. And this has been taken from all the things that I learned, that works and things that doesn't work. So this whole program was set up in a way that it can assist refugees. And my dream hasn't changed. Now, how long we're going to get funding, that will certainly dictate how long we can exist. But I am hoping that maybe other parts of the country can adopt our way of operating and setting up the organization, because it is working, and there are very few organizations just like this that can take whole families and provide the kind of therapy that they need.
Right. Well, thank you so much for the work that you do, for the organization's work, and hopefully you'll get to retire sooner or later. Thanks so much for talking with us today.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us for this episode of In Our Midst. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to contact us, please email us directly at whamproductions@shaw.ca. See you next time.